It's time for Q&A Part 2.
Welcome to Crocs in the Kitchen.
I am Brian.
And I am Jessica.
Yes, we are back literally right after recording that last one.
With more of your questions.
There's just so many questions.
You guys have a lot of questions.
But it's understandable. There's a lot of questions.
There's a lot going on.
That goes on with all of this.
So the next category of questions that we have is all about kind of like how I got my diagnosis. So the first one says, Jessica, when you first felt pain and that something was off, was the pain located on one side where the ovaries are or more in the center? So my pain was specifically on my left side where my left ovary is, and also my left ureter, which is the ureter is the connection between your kidney and your bladder, that my mass happened to be growing around, which we did not know at the time. But the left side, everything was on the left lower abdomen side for me.
Mm-hmm.
And it kind of did spike through to the back as well.
Yeah, I remember that.
But all on that side. Somebody asked, are you saying that your only symptom was a little bit of pain? I didn't hear you talk about any other clues or symptoms you had. So my only symptom that gave me an alert that something was wrong was a minor little bit of pain at the beginning. And so if you go back and kind of watch our first videos about me where I went to the doctor,
something is wrong video.
We honestly thought that I had kidney stones. And we weren't super far off from what was actually going on when it comes down to it, because kidney stones can block your ureter, which the mass was blocking my ureter. So we thought it was going to be kidney stones. So that's kind of like when I first started having the pain. But I started having the pain, and a week later I was like, okay, I need to go get this checked out. I don't know what's going on, but it feels weird, and I'm going to go get it checked out. So after that, then I started getting like diagnostic stuff, like the ultrasound was the first thing. And then I went to my OBGYN and she was like, okay, we can have surgery to remove this mass. But then after that, while I was waiting to get scheduled for surgery, I started having increased pain that I couldn't handle, like screaming kind of pain, and some nausea. And I actually, on the way to the ER, I threw up. And then we got to the ER, and then I ended up being in the hospital for 12 days, and that's when we found out that I had cancer.
Mm-hmm.
Someone asks, what tests did I do for the doctor to take my pain seriously or do an ovarian cancer test? There is no ovarian cancer test officially, and I did a video kind of about awareness for ovarian cancer that we'll link to that talks a little bit more about that. But when I first I actually went to see the nurse practitioner at my doctor's office. They took my pain seriously. They didn't think it was cancer, obviously.
Yeah.
But they were like, okay, this is serious enough that, we'll get an ultrasound and see what's going on in there. So I would say this person said their doctor just thinks that their pain is related to endometrial pain and is just like normal or whatever. I mean, I would push, hey, can we get an ultrasound done to see like what's going on in there if you're in pain. But my doctor, I'm fortunate enough that when I went to the nurse practitioner the first time, that was the suggested route. They spent like an hour with me that first visit that was like asking me questions about the pain, trying to figure out like narrow down what it could be and all this kind of stuff. And then they said, let's get an ultrasound to take a closer look. And that's how everything got the ball rolling. But don't be afraid to advocate for yourself, because sometimes you just have to really you do have to be your own advocate when it comes to medical care. And it would be nice if you could just go in there and assume that they're going to figure everything out and do everything, but that's not always the case. Was there an ovarian cyst in your case? Again, we talked about this before, but yes, I did have a cyst or mass or whatever you want to call it in my left ovary that they could see on this ultrasound.
Yeah.
Somebody else asked, how did you find the CT scan to be diagnostically for you? And they said that their CT scan, before they found their cancer, showed nothing, and it was diagnosed through surgery, although their tumor was small. Did they find evidence of cancer on my CT scan? So when I went to the ER, after I had the ultrasound, and then we ended up in the ER like probably a few weeks later. they did a CT scan and they saw the mass that they saw on the ultrasound. But again, they did not think it was cancer. We were told there are all these other things it could be. For your age, 36, like the odds of it being cancer are very small. But there were some on the interpretation on like the ultrasound and the CT scan, it did say like it could be malignant or benign, like this tumor they couldn't rule out. But the one thing that the doctor said, the doctor who did surgery on me, I remember her saying that there was nothing in any of my scans or like the ultrasound that could have prepared them for what they found when they actually went in and did the surgery. So so this person was kind of who left this comment was kind of going back and forth about the idea of getting CT scans and whether or not like contrast is needed, and how do you know if you need contrast and all that kind of stuff. So again, I leave all those kind of decisions up to the doctors, but I do ask the question. Like when we got to Mayo Clinic, I was like, hey, my CT scans that I've had previously, some of them they did with and without contrast. Some of them they didn't do contrast because I was having problems with my kidneys, and contrast dye is really hard on your kidneys. So I asked, like, should we do another one to get like a clearer picture? And they were like, oh, absolutely, we can do another one. And they added it, and I was able to get in for the scan that day. So again, always be asking questions, always be saying, should we be doing this? Should we be doing that? I found that helpful in my case.
And the thing that I like, though, is that we ask these questions and the doctors give us answers.
Yeah. And they're always willing, if you have a doctor that's not responding to your questions and not taking you seriously, like maybe you need to find another doctor. Like that's the only advice that I could definitely give. But again, we can't really give medical advice or anything like that because we are just random people, not doctors. We get this question a lot. I'll let you take this one. Can they do a PET scan?
Well, I mean, sure, they can do a PET scan. But pretty much all the doctors that we've spoken to have said that they prefer to use CT scans for this type of cancer because it gives a clearer image. They said the PET scan, yes, it does show the things that light up, but it doesn't show as much detail as they would like when it comes to trying to figure out what is actually going on. Now, obviously, at Mayo Clinic, if we asked and said, hey, can we get a PET scan, they would give us a PET scan. But they don't think it's necessary, and they would prefer to use ultrasound or CT scan or MRI.
Well, they and in the doctor last time, we specifically asked about that. And he said that there are some types of cancer where I do a PET scan, and sometimes, it just depends on the kind of cancer. He said for your situation, like the CT scan, like Brian said, is what they would do. So I'm just trusting, again, if I wanted to push the issue and be like, yes, give me a PET scan, I'm sure they would.
Yep.
But I'm just trusting and going with what they're saying they need to figure out my care.
Yep.
Somebody asked if I have been tested for the BRCA gene mutation.
They sometimes call it BRCA.
Yes. And somebody else asked if I would mind clarifying the genetic testing that I got. So I did bring up the report so that I can give you guys a little bit more information. So I got the My Risk Cancer Panel, which is from Myriad Genetics Laboratory. And on that test, it basically, it tests for a number of different things. Let's see. Sequencing and large rearrangement analyses were performed for all coding exons in the following genes. APC, ATM, AXIN2, BAP1, BARD1, blah, blah, blah. It goes on and on and on.
BRCA1, BRCA2.
BRCA1, BRCA2. So it tests for like a ton of things.
Yeah.
And the results from that test, it says the genetic result was negative. There were no clinically significant mutations identified.
Yeah.
And in this case, on this report, it says clinically significant, as defined in this report, is a genetic change that's associated with the potential to alter medical intervention.
Yeah.
So,
and our doctor, our oncologist, the one that we see all the time, she actually was kind of surprised at the fact that this came back as negative. But she did also say that that kind of testing doesn't rule out that it's not something dealing with that. It's just that they don't know what everything does. And so they're testing for the stuff that they do know, and eventually they're hoping that science will catch up and be able to figure out like what some of these other aspects are to the genomic aspects.
So there
of cancer.
was one gene, which was TSC2, that had a variant of uncertain significance. And so that basically just means there is something weird about that gene, but they don't know what it is.
Yep.
And so, like, it even says on the report, like, you can check back with them periodically over your lifetime to see if they've found any more information about that specific gene, because right now they just don't know.
Yeah.
There's nothing significant, but they'll keep that on file, and as they do research, maybe someday they'll know any sort of significance that it might be related to this. The only other things, there was a breast cancer risk score, and my risk score was 18.6%. It says the general population's risk is 13.2%. The remaining lifetime breast cancer risk that I have is 18.6%. And then it also gave me some recommendations based on my family history that I should be having like colon cancer, like a colonoscopy starting somewhere between age 45 to 50 every 10 years. So it kind of just gave just based on personal family history. So this report was based on a blood sample that I gave them, and then also like my family history and all that kind of stuff. Let's see. Somebody else asked, well, while we're talking about the genetics, I guess I'll go to this. So somebody asked, a few people have asked about my grandmother. On my dad's side, my grandmother did pass away in her 70s from ovarian cancer. So there are some people who have said, well, shouldn't you have been on like some kind of like elevated risk, for ovarian cancer? Shouldn't they have been doing additional screening on you? All those kind of things. So she got the cancer when she was in her 70s. Because of that, when it comes to everything that I've been told is when it comes to like genetics, like risks being elevated, they're really looking for people who have, history of relatives that got cancer, like, more around the age 40 or like earlier, like that kind of thing. So like for me, like any children I have, they would definitely be like more concerned about those things because I'm 36. But, the way that it was kind of described to me is like, earlier on in this process, one of my relatives told me that they were told that we didn't have any elevated risk for ovarian cancer because of my grandma, because she was, again, diagnosed in her 70s. And like, by the time you're in your 70s, 80s, whatever, you're kind of like bound to maybe get some kind of cancer anyway. So it really isn't necessarily a genetic thing. My doctors, when I fill out my forms and stuff like that, like I would always put on there that, all the different kinds of cancer history in my family, and including that, and nobody ever there was never a red flag based on that. Now, I've also been told that it still could be genetic, even though the genetic testing didn't find anything, and even though she was in her 70s, just, I don't know, but I feel like on my end, I did everything to alert them prior to this that I had this in my family history. And so, I did the best that I could, I guess. Some people also have asked about my CA125 number. This is something that they did test back on June 1st, and my number was 13.3. On that report, it says the normal range is under 35, so I was in the normal range. On July 12th, I had that test done again at Mayo Clinic, and it said my number was 14. And on that test, it said the normal range is under 46. So I don't know what the actual normal range is, but either way,
you're under.
I'm under. I never had elevated CA125 number. I'll let you handle this one.
Okay.
Have there been talks with the doctor about treatments like CAR T or stem cell transplant, or an interest in drug studies in the future?
About those two particular treatments, no, but I have them in the back of my head for when we kind of come to that next phase. Like, I'm definitely going to ask those questions, especially because the CAR T therapy has been, it seems to show really, really great promise in a lot of different areas of cancer treatment. Uh, Probably, though, she will go on an immunotherapy at some point as well, but I don't know.
Again,
I don't know what that'll be, which one that'll be. I mean, there's also the possibility that she could go into some type of clinical trials for different drugs. I mean, there's a bunch of different options in the future. Like I said, this chemo stuff, this is the first line. And they said they will go through as many lines after this as they possibly need to fight this and keep her alive. And so
yeah, and they've talked about like potentially like trials and other things that that they might be able to get me in on. So like we just don't know, but all those things, like Mayo Clinic has all the things. Like,
all the things.
They have access to everything. So like anything that they're gonna be able to try or do or whatever. And that doesn't mean that I need to do all the things, but like we have so many options, and we have doctors that have really like intentional, I think, they said that they'll review my case on the tumor board again, potentially in the future. Like they're constantly consulting with each other, and they're constantly, so nothing is off the table when it comes to that.
Yeah. So, and especially since Jessica's cancer is rare and weird, it's, I'm sure they'll want to try multiple different approaches. So
okay, so the final category of questions, so we kind of went through the diagnosis, and then these last ones that I had were all about like different tests and stuff. Then there's kind of just a bunch of random questions that didn't really fall into any other categories. So somebody asked, what type of ovarian cancer do I have? The best that we know right now, we have been told that it's endometrioid ovarian cancer.
Yes.
Again, because my cancer is rare and weird, there's a lot of stuff that we still don't know.
Yeah.
And actually I'm doing another biopsy on a lymph node coming up this week. And we'll do another video that kind of takes you through that whole process and what happens with that. But if we can get if we can get another sample of the cancer once it's metastasized, that might answer more of these questions. But so you kind of want to, but you also don't, because we don't want to prove that it's metastasized like 100% for sure. So it's kind of like I don't know. So it'll be an interesting process.
Mm-hmm.
Somebody asked, can you get ovarian cancer if you're negative for HPV? Yes, I was negative for HPV. And that was actually a big determining factor between whether or not it was like endometrial cancer or ovarian cancer. But here's the thing, like they also, I believe, said you can still get endometrial cancer even if your HPV is negative. Like, I don't know. So as far as I know, yes. And mine, because my HPV test that they did was negative.
Yep.
You know how you said they were presenting you to the tumor board. What was the conclusion of that? So we talked about this in a little bit in the last Q&A.
Yeah.
The big thing was, the big two takeaways from the tumor board review at Mayo Clinic were that they don't believe it's neuroendocrine, even though there's some neuroendocrine-like features of the cancer. They think it's ovarian, and that I potentially could be in stage 4 having the cancer, it looks like it might have metastasized to my liver, lymph nodes, other areas. So those were like the big two takeaways from the tumor board review.
Yeah.
But again, like I said, we talked about like them doing another review. It's not like the tumor board review is like the be all end all of this is it. Like it's a constant conversation.
Yeah.
And so, somebody said, wait, just caught this. There's a mass on your other ovary. I know. I feel the same way. We
don't know.
It's still very unclear. Like, is this thing that they're seeing a mass, and like, why wasn't it there before, but it's there now? But like, it's still very confusing. So hopefully we'll get more answers on that. But yeah, it's potential that there's a mass in my other ovary.
Don't know.
What about your ureter area? Has the cancer shrunk? Do you still have the stent? I actually did have the stent taken out from my ureter. It's been like a couple months now.
Yep.
It was in for 3 months. And when they took it out, I was incredibly nervous that the pain and nausea and everything would come back. Because basically, the reason the stent was in there is because I was having hydronephrosis in my left kidney. Again, that ureter is the connection between the kidney and the bladder. So when it's being like, it can't, like, it's being like, whatever the tumor was doing to it was like compressing around it. It's blocking it. The fluid can back up into your kidneys and cause a whole bunch of issues. Although my latest CT scan did say that it looks like that I still have mild hydronephrosis. I haven't had any of those like symptoms return as far as the pain, the nausea. So I'm just kind of keeping an eye on it.
Yeah.
And the stent is no more. And Brian got to watch them take the stent out, and it was really weird.
It was awesome.
Okay. Did you ask what other cell types those lesions might have been on my liver, and if those are responsive to chemotherapy?
Yes and yes. I've asked several times, if there's a possibility that the lesions are something else, or if there's whatever, blah, blah, blah. And they've basically said, yes, there is a possibility it could be something else, but they don't think so because of, the way that, because of the cancer and all of that. And then also because it appears to be responding to chemotherapy. And so that's why they're pretty convinced about all that. But that's pretty much it. I've asked,
we've asked them,
and they've given us answers. But
yeah, it's basically like everything looks suspicious that it's cancer.
Yeah.
And that they're, given that I have cancer, given that they didn't see those lesions on some of the previous, it just, everything indicates that it is, but we still haven't been able to get that proof. And that's why we're doing another biopsy on a lymph node to see if we can get more answers from that.
Yep.
Could this be a Johnson & Johnson thing? So this is something that I've wondered about. So there's a whole thing, for those of you who don't know, saying that like there's potential that, what was it that's in Johnson & Johnson baby powder? Is it talc?
Talcum powder.
Yeah. So that has a connection to ovarian cancer. I actually got like a letter in our PO box from some law group about like, do you want to file a lawsuit, blah, blah, blah kind of thing. And again, like, I don't know. I mean, I'm sure, like, I know I've used Johnson & Johnson baby powder, but I don't know like what the procedure would be to figure out, like, or how you would even know if there was a connection.
Yeah, and even then, your doctor said, like, the people that had those things developed were people that were using it constantly, like daily, and had massive exposure to it. Occasional usage, they said, would not have caused the problem. So,
but it's something we have thought about.
We did think about it.
All right. Are you doing any holistic type healing, like massage, acupuncture, sauna, nature exposure? So yes, I did one session of acupuncture, and then it became a scheduling issue to try to schedule it in Rochester, with us being in St. Louis, except for when we go up for my treatment. And I actually just talked to my integrative oncologist yesterday about getting a local acupuncturist so that we can schedule more regular appointments. So that is something that I'm looking into. I haven't done any massage or sauna or any of that kind of stuff, but as far as like nature exposure, like Brian tries to drag me out of the house as much as possible, and like even if we're just driving around or doing whatever, he just.
He's got this light coming.
I know, he's got like. He tries to get. Speaking of nature exposure.
No, it's the sun.
It's your nature exposure. For me, like, I do therapy. I have been finding like creative outlets, like art projects and things like that, I find are actually really helpful for me. So yes, I do have like those things are all in the mix, for sure. And we're definitely, I would say, trying to get out and do as much as we can when I'm feeling up to it, mentally and physically, and not just like, have me just in a bed doing nothing. Have you been assigned a social worker? yes, I talked to somebody at Mayo Clinic. I've been connected with so many different people there, and I have all the resources that I need. Sometimes it just comes down to me having the energy level to want to get the help or want to follow up on some of the things that they suggest that I do, because it can be a lot to be like, oh, you should be doing this, you should be doing this, you should be doing this. What about this? It's like, just, that's a lot for somebody in my position to try to do. And so I think after I talked to the social worker, I was just a little bit more overwhelmed. But it's good to know that there are resources and I have people that I'm connecting with, like, that can get me help in areas if I need it.
Yeah.
Along those same lines, somebody asked, do you have someone to talk to about your depression and emotions? Again, yes, I have a therapist that I talk to. I have access to resources, all that good stuff. Somebody else asked if I've thought about joining a support group through my local hospital or other organization. I'm not to that point yet where I've wanted to do something like that. And maybe I'll get there someday and maybe I won't. But at this time, I'm just not to that point. Like, I don't have the energy and I am not ready for that.
Yeah.
And then the final question somebody asked is, how is Brian doing?
Yeah, down at the very, very end of all the questions.
Well, I put that one last because I thought it would be a good one for you to talk about. And
I've been thinking about doing
it, but
I've been thinking about doing another video, especially after you did your video about how you're doing, just because, I know in my own mind I'm not that important when it comes to how I'm doing, because it's more so about how you're doing. But everybody else will also say, no, I'm important. I'm going through this too. And so therefore I need to express how I'm feeling and all of that kind of stuff. And so I probably will do a video about that in a bit here. I just didn't want to do one that was like back to back with hers, because then I felt like I would be just competing with her, and I don't want to do that. But I can tell you that I'm doing okay. It's not.
I like how that the significance is the difference in the way you said that. Like, I'm doing okay. Like that, you're more on the second way you said it, for sure.
Yeah, I mean, okay is a big gray area, and I'm just trying to deal with it the best that I can, and I'm just. I'm thankful to my friends. I'm thankful to the online community, including you guys and the people that I game with, and even the people that I play D&D with. Like, everybody's just been super cool, and they've been super inclusive, and working around scheduling and stuff like that. Everything is just is really, really cool, and I'm just. A lot of times I'm just overwhelmed by the sheer outpouring that I get, which is a fraction of the amount that Jessica gets. But so I don't even know how in the world you even remotely deal with the sheer number of people that tell you they love you and they're praying for you. But I'm doing okay.
Yeah, and I think personally, we were talking about this with my mom the other day. I think this whole situation is harder on them than it is on me, because I can't imagine being reversed and me having to deal with one of them being sick. I can control, and I have the power to control what's going on, and I'm experiencing it all, physically and all that. And so for them to just feel so helpless and they can't help me, because they can be there for me, they can try to say the right thing, but ultimately this is just something we have to go through. There's no way to just pick me up and put me on the other side of it.
Yeah.
And to me, I feel like it's actually harder on them even than it is on me. And it's really hard on me. So, not to end this on a bummed out note, but it just sucks. And sometimes all that either of us want is just for people to acknowledge that it sucks. And there's nothing right to say. There's no magic thing that you can say that'll just make everything better.
Yeah.
But sometimes just acknowledging that it sucks and just being there is just what you need.
Yeah.
So, but that's all the questions that we have from you guys. I'm
Good.
sure we
got to get out of here before this progresses even further.
I'm sure there's a bunch more questions out there, but hopefully these 2 videos have given you a little bit better of an idea. Oh, now you're like,
yeah, it's just gonna sit there.
So yeah, hopefully this has given you a little bit of more information about things that you might have been wondering about.
Yeah.
And we will keep making videos. And do you want to close this one out?
Yeah, subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and click the bell that is right next to that button. You'll get notified whenever we post a new video. You can also follow us on social media, Facebook and Instagram, and you can see more of our lives and all the stuff that Jessica loves to post on there. But I think that's all I got.
That's definitely all I got.
We will see you next time on Crocs in the Kitchen. Bye.